What happens when the woman you love, the woman you married, looks you dead in the eye and tells you to step up or get out? And what if stepping up means sacrificing your entire life to become a live-in babysitter for kids who aren't even yours? I was 29, successful, and had built my own little empire. My house, my career in logistics management, it was all neatly planned. I'd saved like crazy through my entire 20s, owning my home outright. Then Olivia walked in, a vibrant force of nature, and suddenly, my meticulously organized world was about to be turned upside down by 3 kids, ages 8, 10, and 12, who weren't mine. Everyone in my life thought I was crazy. My mom practically had a heart attack when I told her I was dating a woman with 3 kids. But honestly, Olivia seemed to have her life together. The kids were, well, they were kids. A little wild, but nothing I thought I couldn't handle. Their biological father, Michael, paid child support on time, which was a plus, even if he barely saw them, maybe once or twice a month. Olivia had a decent job in medical billing. We split costs on dates 50-50, and she never once pressured me to be their new dad, which was crucial. I liked the kids fine, they were good when they wanted to be, but I wasn't looking to replace anyone or step into a role I never auditioned for. We dated for about a year, and everything felt natural, easy. We got married in a small, intimate ceremony. And for the first 6 months of our marriage, it was exactly what I'd signed up for. I helped when I could, we had family dinners, and our weekends were a mix. Sometimes the kids stayed, sometimes they had their own plans. We'd go to the zoo, catch a movie, it felt balanced. It felt like a true partnership. Then, something shifted. I still can't pinpoint the exact moment. It started so small, so subtly, I didn't even notice the pattern forming. Olivia asked if I could watch the kids one Saturday while she went to yoga. Sure, absolutely no problem, I said. Then it was yoga plus brunch with her friends. Okay, she needs social time, I get it. But soon, it was every single Saturday. Then Saturdays and Sunday mornings. Then, suddenly, I was spending entire weekends with 3 kids who weren't biologically mine, while she was out rediscovering herself, as she put it. And here's what nobody tells you about step-parenting. If the biological parent doesn't enforce rules, you literally can't without becoming the villain. Olivia was all about gentle parenting, which apparently meant 0 consequences for anything ever. The oldest, 14 now, would go through my personal belongings without asking. Last month, he snapped my expensive torque wrench in the garage. When I asked Olivia to talk to him, she just shrugged. Boys will be boys. You're making a big deal out of nothing. The middle one, 12, talked back constantly, refusing even basic chores. I once asked him to clear his plate, and he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're not my dad. I don't have to listen to you." Olivia just laughed it off. The youngest, 10, was actually pretty sweet, but he made insane messes because no one ever taught him to clean up. Anytime I tried to set a reasonable boundary, Olivia would swoop in, telling me I was too harsh, too strict, or too mean. But then, when they inevitably acted up or broke something on my watch, suddenly it was my fault for not controlling them. The double standard was absolutely insane. My job is genuinely stressful. I work in logistics, putting out fires from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., sometimes later. Freight carriers screaming, clients panicking, it's constant problem solving. My weekends were my only real time to decompress, to just exist. But now, every Friday night, Olivia would have this look of expectation in her eyes. And every Saturday morning, she'd be out the door with her yoga mat before I even woke up, leaving me to the sound of kids already fighting downstairs. I started to feel less like a husband and more like a live-in babysitter who also happened to pay most of the bills. Our house, by the way, was mine. I bought it at 25, spent years fixing it up. Olivia and the kids moved in after we married, and I never made a fuss about it being my house. But the reality was, I covered the mortgage, utilities, most groceries, and all repairs. She paid for her car and some of the kids' activities. It was maybe a 70-30th split financially, which I was fine with because I made more. But I was not fine with being treated like free childcare on top of being the primary breadwinner. Around month 8 of our marriage, I tried to have a calm, rational conversation. I told her I needed more balance, that I couldn't be the default weekend parent when I wasn't their legal parent. She didn't yell. She got quiet, then said, "You knew what you were signing up for when you married me." "Yes," I countered. "I signed up to be your husband and a supportive step-parent, not a full-time babysitter." That's when the tears started. She cried that I was rejecting her children, that a real man would step up without being asked, that her ex-husband was a deadbeat, and she thought I was different. I felt like absolute garbage. I backed off completely. I kept watching the kids on weekends without complaint. But it got even worse. She started going out on Friday nights too, girls' nights, wine tastings, concerts. She was out living her best life while I was home, making boxed mac and cheese, breaking up screaming fights over video game controllers. Her friends' Instagram posts showed her dancing and laughing, looking happier than I'd seen her in months. One night, she came home at midnight, smelling of alcohol and perfume, while I was passed out on the couch with the youngest kid asleep on my lap after he'd had a nightmare. She didn't even ask how our night went. She just stumbled upstairs to bed. Meanwhile, there I was at 2 a.m., carrying a sleeping 10-year-old back to his room, wondering, how the hell did this become my life? Michael, the kid's biological father, was basically a ghost. He paid his court-ordered child support, yes, but he saw them maybe once a month, always canceling last minute. Olivia would complain about him constantly, calling him unreliable, selfish. But she never actually pushed him to be more involved. It was just easier to rely on me instead. 3 weeks ago, everything finally came to a head. It was a Friday night. I'd just gotten home from an absolutely brutal week at work, truly looking forward to sleeping in and doing absolutely nothing productive. Olivia walked into the bedroom while I was changing. "We need to talk," she said. She sat on the edge of the bed and told me that starting this weekend, she needed me to take the kids every single Saturday and Sunday. All day, both days, every weekend from now on. She said she'd completely lost herself in motherhood and marriage, and desperately needed time to remember who she was. I just stared at her like she'd grown a second head. I asked, what about my time? My own mental health? She said this was what being a real family meant, that sacrifices had to be made. I simply said no. A clear, simple no. She blinked at me like I'd physically slapped her. "What do you mean by that?" she asked. "I mean, no. I'm not doing that. I need my weekends too. We need to find a different solution that works for both of us." Her entire face changed. In an instant. She stood up, and her voice went ice cold in a way I'd never heard. "Step up or get out." That's exactly what she said. Word for word. Not, "Let's talk." Not, "Let's find a compromise." Not, "Let's figure this out together." A straight ultimatum. Step up or get out. I looked at her, arms crossed tightly, waiting for me to cave, to apologize, like I always had. And something inside me just snapped. I walked to my closet and pulled down my old duffel bag from the top shelf. "What the hell are you doing?" she demanded. I started packing clothes, enough for at least a week. She called me dramatic and childish. I packed my toothbrush, phone charger, laptop, work clothes for Monday. She followed me from room to room, yelling that I was throwing a tantrum like her kids, that I'd cool off and come crawling back. I loaded everything into my car while she stood in the driveway, actually screaming that I was abandoning her and her family, that I was just like her ex-husband. I got in my car, backed out of my own driveway, and drove straight to my brother's apartment across town. My phone started blowing up before I even hit the highway. Texts, calls, voicemails every few seconds. I turned it on silent and just kept driving into the night. I stayed at my brother's place that first night, barely sleeping. My phone was going insane. I finally looked around 2 a.m. The first few messages were angry, calling me immature and selfish. Then they shifted to sad, saying she didn't mean it, we should talk. Then back to angry again, claiming I never loved her kids. Then her sister started texting. Then her mom called 3 times. I turned the phone completely off. My brother, bless him, was incredibly cool. He made up the couch, gave me blankets, and didn't ask too many questions. The next morning, over coffee, he just said, "You can stay as long as you need." I always thought Olivia expected too much. That first week was absolutely surreal. I went to work like normal, came back to my brother's, and watched my phone light up with messages I didn't answer. Olivia's texts grew more desperate, begging, then calling me every name in the book. Her friends started getting involved, too, people I thought were my friends, telling me I was wrong for walking out. Her sister even showed up at my workplace on Wednesday, completely out of line, causing a scene in the parking lot. "You need to think about those kids," she yelled. I told her, calmly, "Those kids have a father. And it's not me." She called me a heartless bastard. By the end of week 1, I heard through a mutual friend that Olivia had hired a babysitter for the weekends. Good, I thought. That's what she should have done from the beginning. Instead of volunteering me, I figured maybe this would all blow over, we'd get divorced quietly, and life would move on. I was wrong. Week 2 is when things really started falling apart for her. The babysitter quit. I found out because Olivia left me a voicemail, absolutely screaming about how the babysitter said her kids were completely out of control and she couldn't handle them. Olivia somehow blamed me for this. If you'd been there to help establish routines, this never would have happened. The mental gymnastics were Olympic level. She tried to get her mom to come stay, but her mom lived 3 states away and had her own life. Her mom told her, and I only know this because her sister told someone who told me, that Olivia made her bed, now she had to lie in it. Even her own mother wasn't willing to drop everything to fix her problem. That's when Olivia's work situation imploded. She'd been skating by at her medical billing job, but now, without me there to cover mornings and evenings, she was constantly late. The kids' school would call because someone forgot lunch or had a meltdown, and Olivia would have to leave work. Her boss was understanding at first, but you can only be understanding for so long when someone's missing half days multiple times a week. A friend who works in the same medical complex told me Olivia looked absolutely exhausted every time she saw her. Dark circles, messy bun, coffee stains. Turns out, trying to do everything alone is actually hard. Who knew? Week 3, Olivia tried a different approach. The angry text stopped, and suddenly everything was apologetic, promising change. She sent long messages about realizing she'd taken me for granted, how she understood what I was dealing with, how if I came back, things would be completely different. She'd hire regular help. I'd have my weekends. She'd be a better partner. Part of me, a very small, stupid part, almost considered it. Then I remembered her standing in our bedroom, saying, "Step up or get out," like I was some employee she could boss around. And I knew nothing would actually change. She'd promise anything to get me back, and then slowly, things would slide right back to how they were. I texted her back for the first time in 3 weeks. I simply said I'd contacted a lawyer and would be filing for divorce. The response was immediate, nuclear. She called me 17 times in a row. She showed up at my brother's apartment building, but security wouldn't let her up. She sent me paragraphs about how I was destroying our family, how could I give up so easily, how she never thought I was the type of man to run away from problems. I didn't respond to any of it. My lawyer was this older woman named Patricia, who'd handled my buddy's divorce years earlier. I told her the whole situation in our first meeting. She just nodded, like she'd heard it 1,000 times before. She asked if I'd legally adopted the kids. No. My name on school paperwork or insurance. No, everything was still under Olivia and her ex. The house? I showed her the deed, my name only, dated 3 years before I even met Olivia. Patricia smiled. "This is going to be pretty straightforward," she said. Week 4, Olivia lost her job. I found out because she left me a crying voicemail at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, saying it was all my fault, that if I hadn't left, she wouldn't have been late so many times, that I'd ruined her life. She was hysterical, barely coherent. Part of me felt bad for about 30 seconds. Then I remembered that none of this would have happened if she'd just treated me like a partner instead of free help. She tried to make me feel guilty, saying she couldn't afford the mortgage without my income, that she and the kids would end up homeless. I didn't respond, but I did text my lawyer to ask about her trying to stay in my house. Patricia said, "Don't worry. We'll handle it through the courts." Olivia's family started ramping up their involvement after she lost her job. Her dad called me, which was wild because I'd met the man maybe 5 times total. He did the whole stern father routine, saying I needed to be a man and take care of my responsibilities. I told him very calmly that his daughter had given me an ultimatum and I'd chosen the door. I added that his grandchildren had a biological father who needed to step up. He didn't like that answer. He said some things about my character I won't repeat. I hung up on him. The really crazy part happened about 5 weeks after I left. Olivia's sister showed up at my brother's building again, but this time, she had all 3 kids with her. Security called up, and I went down to the lobby to see what she wanted. She was standing there with these 3 tired-looking kids, and she literally said I needed to take them for the weekend because Olivia was having a breakdown. I looked at her like she'd lost her mind. I said, "We aren't together anymore. I'm not their stepfather anymore. This isn't my responsibility." The kids were just standing there, confused and uncomfortable, and I felt horrible for them. But I also knew if I took them even once, it would never stop. The sister started yelling at me right there in the lobby, "What kind of man turns his back on children?" She called me selfish and cruel. The oldest kid, the 14-year-old, told her they should just go, that they didn't want to stay with me anyway. That hurt more than I expected, but I didn't let it show. I told the sister to leave or I'd call the police for harassment. She grabbed the kids and left, but not before telling me I'd regret this. That same week, Olivia sent me one last message that made it clear she still didn't understand anything. She texted, "All I wanted was a partner who would actually help me." This, from the woman who'd been at wine bars 3 nights a week while I made dinner for kids who weren't mine. She said she couldn't believe I was doing this to her, that she'd given me everything, that she thought I was different from other men. She said all she'd wanted was a partner, and apparently that was too much to ask. I finally responded. I told her she didn't want a partner. She wanted a babysitter and a paycheck. I told her, "Step up or get out," were your words, not mine, and I simply chose the option you gave me. I said I was done being her solution to a problem she created. Then I blocked her number. My lawyer filed the divorce papers the next day. The divorce process took about 3 months total, which Patricia said was actually pretty fast for this kind of situation. Olivia tried to drag it out at first, asking for extensions, claiming she needed more time to get her finances in order, but the judge wasn't having it. Our first court date was in early October, about 2 months after I'd walked out. And that's when things got really interesting. Olivia showed up with her own lawyer, some guy who looked fresh out of law school, and they immediately went for the throat. Her lawyer argued that I'd taken on a parental role, that I'd been acting as their father figure for nearly 2 years, and that I should be responsible for child support. My lawyer, Patricia, just smiled and pulled out a folder full of documentation. School records showing Michael listed, not me. Medical records, same thing. Insurance paperwork, all under their bio dad. Patricia argued that I'd been married to Olivia for less than 2 years, that I'd never legally adopted the children, and that I'd never even attempted to take on a parental role beyond normal step-parent duties. The judge asked Olivia's lawyer if he had any evidence of adoption proceedings or any legal documentation showing I'd accepted parental responsibility. He didn't, because there wasn't any. That argument died right there in the courtroom. Then Olivia's lawyer tried a different angle, arguing that she'd become accustomed to a certain lifestyle during our marriage and deserved spousal support. Patricia pointed out that our marriage lasted less than 2 years, that Olivia had her own income during the entire marriage until recently, and that her job loss was due to her own performance issues, not the divorce. The judge looked tired and asked what Olivia's current employment situation was. Her lawyer admitted she'd been let go but was actively looking for work. The judge made a note and moved on. The house was the big one, the thing Olivia was really fighting for. Her lawyer argued that it had been the family home, that her children had lived there and shouldn't be displaced, that she had nowhere else to go. Patricia calmly presented the deed, showing I'd purchased the house 3 full years before I even met Olivia, that it was my sole property before the marriage, and that under state law, it remained my separate property. She also pointed out that Olivia and the kids had a place to live before they moved in with me, implying they could find somewhere else again. The judge asked Olivia directly where she'd been living before our marriage. She admitted she'd been renting a 3-bedroom apartment. The judge ruled the house was mine. Period. No dispute, no split, just mine. I watched Olivia's face fall, and I didn't feel victorious, just tired. Then something happened that I absolutely didn't see coming. The biological father of Olivia's kids, Michael, showed up to the second court date. Nobody had told me he'd be there. And from the look on Olivia's face, she hadn't expected it either. I'd met him exactly twice before. He asked the judge if he could speak, and the judge allowed it. Michael explained that during my marriage to Olivia, she'd consistently told him he needed to back off from the kids because I was stepping into the father role, and it was confusing for them. She'd told him multiple times that the kids didn't need him around as much anymore because they had me now. Then Michael pulled out his phone and started reading texts. Here's one from May. Please give us space, Michael. He's bonding with the boys. Another from July. They're calling him Dad now. You're confusing them by being around so much. All lies. He said he'd foolishly believed her and had reduced his visits to almost nothing, just paying child support and staying away like she'd asked. But after Olivia and I separated, she'd suddenly started demanding he take the kids more, expecting him to cover every weekend. He'd realized she'd been playing both of us. The judge asked if Michael wanted to modify his custody arrangement. He said yes. He wanted 50-50 custody, that he'd been kept from his own kids and wanted to make up for lost time. Olivia's lawyer objected immediately, but Michael's case was solid. He had documentation of everything, texts where Olivia explicitly told him to stay away, followed by recent texts demanding he take the kids constantly. The judge ordered a temporary custody modification, giving Michael the kids every other week instead of just twice a month, pending a full custody hearing. Olivia looked like she was going to be sick. After that hearing, I ran into Michael in the courthouse parking lot. We ended up talking for about 20 minutes, comparing notes on our experiences with Olivia. Turns out she'd told him I was desperate to be a father figure and was pushing him out. She told me he was a deadbeat who didn't care about his kids. Both were lies. Michael seemed like a decent guy who'd been genuinely trying to do what he thought was best for his children based on what their mother told him. We shook hands, and he thanked me for not trying to replace him. I told him those kids needed their actual dad, not some random guy their mom married. The final divorce decree came through in mid-December. I kept the house, all my personal property, my retirement accounts, everything that was mine before the marriage. Olivia got nothing except her own car and personal belongings. No spousal support, no claim to my property, nothing. The judge's ruling was pretty clear. Our short marriage and her own choices had led to her current situation. My lawyer told me it was one of the cleanest divorces she'd handled in years. I moved back into my house 2 days after the divorce was finalized. It felt strange at first, like I was walking into a museum of my own life. Olivia had cleared out all her stuff and the kids' things, and the house felt empty in a way it never had before. But it also felt peaceful. I could leave my things where I wanted them. I could spend Saturday morning doing absolutely nothing without guilt. I could come home from work and just exist in silence if I wanted to. It took me a couple of weeks to realize how much constant stress I'd been living with. About a month after the divorce was final, I was scrolling through Facebook late one night and saw that Olivia had posted something public. I don't know why I clicked on it. Maybe morbid curiosity. She'd written this long post about how hard it was to be a single mother, how men didn't want to date women with children, how good men were impossible to find, how she'd thought she found one, but he'd abandoned her family when things got hard. The comments were full of her friends agreeing with her, saying she deserved better, saying men were trash. A few people who knew both of us had commented more balanced things, but she deleted those. I sat there reading it and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no guilt, no satisfaction, just nothing. I took a screenshot, sent it to my brother with a laughing emoji, then blocked Olivia on every social media platform I had. My brother texted back, saying I dodged a massive bullet and that mom was proud of me for standing up for myself. I made myself a sandwich, cracked open a beer, and watched a movie I'd been wanting to see for months. The next morning, I woke up at 10:30, which felt absolutely luxurious. I made coffee, sat on my back porch, and just listened to the birds for a while. No one needed anything from me. No one was fighting in the next room. No one was going through my stuff or making demands or giving me ultimatums. I got my life back. A few months later, I'd heard through mutual friends that Olivia had moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town and was working 2 part-time jobs to make ends meet. Michael had gotten his 50-50 custody arrangement finalized, so she only had the kids half the time now. She'd apparently tried dating, but it wasn't going well. One friend said she'd asked about me, whether I was seeing anyone, if I ever talked about her. I told that friend I didn't think about her at all anymore, which was mostly true. Sometimes I still think about that night when she gave me the ultimatum. Step up or get out. She'd meant it as a power move, a way to force me into the role she decided I should play. But ultimatums are funny things. Sometimes, the person you're trying to control calls your bluff, and then you're stuck living with consequences you never actually wanted. Olivia thought I'd cave because I always had before. She thought I needed her more than she needed me. She was wrong on both counts. I'm 30 now, still living in my house, still working my job, still enjoying my quiet weekends. I learned an important lesson from all of this. When someone shows you who they really are, when they lay out the terms of how they see you and what they expect from you, believe them. And if those terms aren't acceptable, walk away. No amount of history or hope or guilt is worth living a life where you're just a supporting character in someone else's story. Sometimes the best thing you can do is choose the door and never look back. That's exactly what I did, and I've never regretted it for a single second. Have you ever faced an ultimatum that forced you to choose yourself? Or seen someone else try to manipulate a situation for their own benefit? I'm curious to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.